Hey everybody, it's MP with Small Field Drafts back again for another three-person small field draft. We're in the queue here. We're going to be starting from the 2 spot in just a few seconds. Quickly, I wanted to highlight a draft I did over the weekend that I think is quite interesting. Let's pull up the big board here so you can see how it went down. But I did a higher stakes $25 three-person best ball draft. And the first 5 or so rounds went as expected. A lot of wide receivers, Travis Kelce, of course, in the first round, and then a handful top 5 running backs or so. So I was here at the 3 spot against 2 highly experienced badges. And I had a choice when it came to the 6th round. I wasn't going to be picking for 4 more turns. And there were no quarterbacks had gone off the board at that point. So I chose Mark Andrews as my first overall tight end, hoping that one of the top 3 quarterbacks would make it back to me because there were 3 on the board, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Nick Chubb, guys that I like. Let's quick make our selection over here. Justin Jefferson went off the board first. I'm going to go with Jamar Chase because I just don't think there's any chance he makes it back to us. Okay, but then again, very quickly, what I really wanted to highlight is I reached on Mark Andrews. I made the choice to grab Mark Andrews, make sure I can get Mark Andrews. I want him if I'm not getting Kelce. And then hopefully another one of these quarterbacks comes back to me and I can grab them. So I got Mark Andrews and I got Patrick Mahomes. I feel really good about my positional advantage. And I also feel good about my top 10 wide receivers and my top 3 running backs that I've still got. But a strategy that I was able to implement throughout the draft was something I'm coining as the tight end slow rug. We're back on the clock over here. McCaffrey and Kelce went off the board. Okay, so we have a choice between a guy like Hill, Kupp, and Austin Eckler. Now, I'm hoping that if we take Kupp or Hill, that Eckler will fall to us. And usually I take Kupp here, but just to add a little bit of variance, I'm going to draft Tyreek Hill. All right, back again, the slow tight end rug, because it's the slow rug that wrecks you the hardest. What does that mean? Well, as we can see here, the guy in the 1 spot didn't draft a tight end in the first 11 rounds. And Strandberger, the guy in the number 2 spot, drafted Travis Kelce at number 2 overall. Back on the clock, Eckler made it back to us. Perfect. We have another choice. I think Stephon Diggs is a guy we want in the queue. Bijan Robinson, I'm more than happy to take him. Davante Adams and CeeDee Lamb are both guys I wanted to come around. Anyway, the slow tight end rug, get back to this quickly. I didn't take Mark Andrews until 16, so I didn't get my first tight end until pick 16. The 2 spot had already taken their tight end. They felt the need to push tight end. And Putz here in the 1st spot felt because he didn't get Kelce, because he didn't get Andrews, he could keep pushing tight end. So they kept pushing and pushing tight end. I was able to get Hawkinson, Kittle, Goddard, and Andrews all within the first 46 picks. And we can see on the other screen how that turned out. Now it's back on our turn here. 2 wide receivers went off the board in CeeDee Lamb and Garrett Wilson. I think Stephon Diggs is a wide receiver we really want to pair with our Chase and Hill. Now, I'm kind of hoping Bijan Robinson makes it back to us, but if he doesn't, I'm kind of expecting he won't just because he is a highly sought-after player, top 3 running back. Yeah. All right, so we're going to have a choice here on our next pick. This guy's probably going to choose Adams. Do we want to go for Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb? Oh, no, Davante Adams did make it back to us, so I am going to be choosing him here. Definitely one of Barkley, Chubb, or Taylor is going to come back to us on our next pick, and I think that's who we should be going after. So we'll let Davante Adams go off the board for us. But coming back to my team here in this $25 3-person draft, you can see at quarterback I got Mahomes and Herbert, so I got top talent there. I got McCaffrey and Eckler, my top 2 running backs. I got Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, and Garrett Wilson, 3 of the top 10 wide receivers, and 2 of them are in the top 5. And then at tight end, even though I didn't get Travis Kelce, I got Mark Andrews, T.J. Hawkinson, George Kittle, and Dallas Goedert. What does that do for our team? Because the 2 other guys in our draft were pushing tight end. One of them felt they had Kelce. They didn't need to take another tight end. Now, the Kelce drafter did take Pitts, what I think was smart. He took another top 5 tight end, and he also took Darren Waller. I think a bit of a waste if you have Pitts. But the first guy in the 1 hole, the value that he got not taking a tight end was usurped by the fact that he only drafted Njoku and Ingram. All right, we got a couple seconds here on the clock. Nick Chubb, we'll be more than happy to take Nick Chubb as our running back too. So here in this draft right now, we got Eckler and Chubb, and then Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Davante Adams. Perfect. Who are we looking for on the board next? We're looking for some quarterbacks. The thing about quarterbacks is their ADP has been falling in these 3-person drafts, and it's kind of correlating to their ADP falling in these 3-person drafts. Mark Andrews went off the board. I should have probably thought about taking him there at 17. That's okay. We don't need to take one of these quarterbacks since we know for a fact that one of them will fall back to us. And we have our choice of these next tier of wide receivers. Devontae Smith, I really like. Jalen Waddle, of course, we're betting on Miami with Tyreek Hill already. So let's just keep the bet on Miami. If they're going to be doing well, they're going to be doing really well, and both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle will get theirs. Now, who are we hoping of these quarterbacks? I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes as my QB1, and then looks like, okay, Patrick Mahomes went off the board. Do we want Chris Olave, T. Higgins? I don't think so. I don't think we want to risk the chance of this guy on the turn here taking 2 of the last 2 quarterbacks here. So I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts. I think the Eagles and Hurts has a very high ceiling. Their defense not being as elite as it was last year. They might have to throw a bit more. Last year in the second half of games, they were just running out the clock because they were up by so much that they had scored in the first half. Okay, again, just quickly recapping what happened in this $25 draft. Travis Kelce went at 2, Mark Andrews went at 16, where I took him, and then no quarterbacks went for the next, 4 or 5 rounds, or excuse me, no tight ends went for the next 4 or 5 rounds. I took Hawkinson at 33. I was like, okay, I'm getting the positional advantage at Mark Andrews and Hawkinson. I'm playing bully ball, taking Hawkinson away from you. And then again, at pick 40, 7 picks later, no tight ends have been taken off the board. George Kittle is still sitting there. I say, okay, if you're going to keep pushing this value on George Kittle, especially over a guy like Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, JK Dobbins, in this 3-person format where not only can I benefit from George Kittle's spike weeks, I can take them away from you. I think it's more, I think we should be doing that more often. And then, of course, the guy next to me with Travis Kelce took Kyle Pitts. He didn't want to get totally iced out. But this guy at the 1 spot, he was adamant that he was not going to take a tight end. He didn't get any of the top 2 guys. Okay, back to our draft here. We still got Chris Olave and T. Higgins. Now, Josh Allen is there, but I don't think it's right to take 2 of the top 3 or more. So we got Chris Olave, who I think still belongs in that 3rd tier of wide receivers. I do think T. Higgins belongs there too. We're hoping that Ramondre Stevenson, Josh Jacobs make it back to us. This is a guy I really want. Okay, perfect. Josh Allen went off the board. Ramondre Stevenson, love him right now. The Patriots just cut James Robinson. So there's less of a worry of some backfield disruption, although, of course, Bellatrix, you never know what's exactly going to happen. Let's take a look at our roster here. Pull this up full screen. We have Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, and Ramondre Stevenson. 3 guys I love. I think they have really high ceilings for this year. Jalen Hurts, we're great at quarterback. We have a great stable of wide receivers off of the board right now. We don't have any tight ends, so we might want to consider taking Hawkinson, Kittle, or Pitts, one of those guys here. The only other guy, maybe Breece Hall. There's been some reports recently about him falling down the board. Let's just take Najee Harris. No, we didn't get him up there in time. That's okay. We got TJ Hawkinson at 32 as our first tight end. Going off of what I was talking about with my last draft, we can consider my slow tight end rug theory. Which I find in some drafts, that your opponents are pushing tight end. They're not drafting tight ends. They keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. We can benefit off that by just scooping up that value. If over the next, let's say 3 or 4 picks, I can grab George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, Dallas Goedert, and TJ Hawkinson and steal those guys away from the other 2 who, let's not kid ourselves, they're beating us at tight end because they've drafted both Kelce and Kittle. We are kind of the odd men out when it comes to tight end. Now, they might be feeling they don't have to take any more tight ends because they feel really strong. They're probably considering, yeah, we can draft, I can draft Kittle later. I can draft Pitts towards the end or Goddard. We don't want to let them do that. Now, we don't want to take all the tight ends at once. This is the slow part of the slow rug. Just one at a time. One tight end at a time. I don't feel like I need to grab a running back like Najee Harris because, while he is a top 12 running back according to his positional ADP here, it's not like people are expecting him to have a massive breakout season. We have some great top tier running back talent. I'm not going to be sad if I miss out on some of these guys. Jahmyr Gibbs, though, is a guy that I like. Now, our slow rug might not have been slow enough. D. Goodman at pick 36 took Kyle Pitts. He didn't want to get iced out. So our slow rug isn't really working. I definitely want to keep Dallas Goedert on my queue here. With TJ Hawkinson and George Kittle, that's a great tight end room. But in these 3-person drafts, when you're competing against both Kelce and Andrews plus Pitts, plus Goddard, we want to make sure that we're not giving our opponents that advantage. Okay, Golden Child. He was the Kelsey drafter. Oh shit, no. I did it wrong. Oh, fuck. I'm rusty. First draft of the week on stream here. I wanted Jahmyr Gibbs really badly, or Dallas Goedert I would have been happy with. Instead, we come away with Calvin Ridley. Don't love it, because I do think Jahmyr Gibbs is highly prized in this format. Justin Fields went off the board. We still have Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, two guys I'm more than happy with as my QB2. Okay, Joe Mixon went off the board. That's interesting. We're going to draft Jahmyr Gibbs here. I don't think D. Goodman's going to take a tight end. And if we get the chance to draft Goddard at our next pick, we are definitely going to do that. Justin Herbert. Okay, so Golden Child on the other side of us already has 3 quarterbacks. And D. Goodman here, he's already got 2, including a top 3 quarterback, I do believe. No, he's got Jalen Hurts. So he did take those 2 of the next 2 quarterbacks we were looking at. That's fine. I'm fine at being, quote unquote, sniped at quarterback, especially in this range. I've already got Jalen Hurts, who I'm going to assume is going to be the number 1 quarterback in points per game just for this draft right here, right now. And I'm going to stack him up with Dallas Goedert, my 3rd tight end off the board. And I do think he is the last of that 2nd, 3rd tier tight ends. These guys, Darren Waller, Evan Ingram, David Njoku, I don't really want to grab them if I can avoid it. So our tight end room, while we don't have any of the top end talent in Kelsey or Andrews, we got 3 of the next kind of 4 tight ends that were there. I would have loved it if one of the Kelsey or Andrews drafters didn't take Pitts, but what we were able to do by drafting 3 of these tight ends, you can see Golden Child feels like he has to keep up. At pick 45, he drafts Darren Waller. That's what we want to do with this slow tight end rug. In these 3-person drafts, there's not a ton of things that you can do, right? You just draft the best player, and most of the players on the board are going to be very good and have a chance at scoring a top 5 in their positional ceiling. And we're getting great value on Travis Etienne here. We're getting great value on these running back rooms. That's another thing with these 3-person drafts. You have 18 roster spots, and because your roster talent is so deep and so strong, you can afford to quote unquote waste roster spaces strategically. So that's why I don't mind taking 4 tight ends, especially if there's only 6 tight ends that I think are really worth drafting in this format. If I can get Kelsey, Hawkinson, Kittle, and Pitts, I might be doing that more and more often. Especially if I'm not getting Kelsey, what I'm probably doing is not drafting Kelsey in the first round and instead trying to draft Andrews as much as I possibly can. All right, we are on the clock here. We don't want to time out again for the 3rd time today. That would just be embarrassing. We have very strong wide receivers. We do have strong running backs, but not a lot of depth. We have 2 more picks, so we're definitely thinking about quarterback and Deshaun Watson, although I think we can leave that. We have 7. Let's go with, didn't make a choice fast enough. We got Deebo Samuel, that's fine. Him as our last wide receiver. 8. We only have 5 running backs. Am I going to be comfortable leaving this draft with only 5 running backs? I'm thinking yes, because we have such top tier talent with Austin Eckler and Ramondre Stevenson and Nick Chubb, who I like as tier 2 running backs. And then I love Jahmyr Gibbs and Travis Etienne in this format because I think, one, Travis Etienne is an explosive guy. We're going to get Deshaun Watson here. And Jahmyr Gibbs could have a path to a huge workload if David Montgomery goes down. He could be the one and only running back in Detroit. So while we only have 5, and that makes me a little bit queasy just because of the depth of the season and the position of running back, we might need more than we think. But we got more wide receivers. We got a good stable of tight ends. And now we're drafting our 2nd quarterback. So we're not missing out on our bye week. I think we got a very good team, even though we auto-drafted 3 times. That is a little unfortunate. I think we got good value all over the board. Let's, when this finishes up, compare our team to the other 2 in this draft and see how we turn out. I think we're going to be looking pretty good. I would have loved it if I had gotten Andrews before instead of taking, who was it? Was it Hurts or was it Stevenson? I think that's the only thing we could have done differently, but let's see how our teams fare out. So my team here, quarterback Jalen Hurts and Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, I think, is undervalued, and Jalen Hurts, I think, is the odds-on favorite to be the number 1 overall quarterback in points per game. Running back Austin Eckler, who I love, is having a top 2 top 1 overall outcome. Nick Chubb, I think, could lead the league in touchdowns. Ramondre Stevenson could be the one and only guy, get a lot of work. Jahmyr Gibbs, we know, is a big passer. And if something happens to David Montgomery, he could have a huge year. Travis Etienne is explosive. He can bust off 60-yard touchdowns any week of the year. And that's kind of what we want for our running back profile here. Meanwhile, at wide receiver, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Devontae Adams. Perfect. We got 4 of the top 10 wide receivers. And not only that, we got 2 top 3 wide receivers, and then 2 of like the Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams of like that next tier of 5 to say wide receiver 8. And so I was considering top 10 as the cutoff, but I think maybe I want to dial that back and be a little bit more discriminatory and say instead of the top 10 wide receivers, I want at least 3 wide receivers in like the top 8. So I think that Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra St. Brown and maybe CeeDee Lamb, maybe I should be leaning towards them as more in the same tier as Waddle, Olave, Higgins, and Devontae Smith. So I want to be trying to get as many of these guys as I can. So we did really good here by getting 4 of the top 8 wide receivers, I think, and then 3 of the top 6 tight ends, but we didn't get any of the top 2, who I think kind of are in a tier of their own. So we're feeling pretty good. Let's see how we compare to D. Goodman, who is at the 1 spot and has got a nice badge on him. He's got Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow. So he didn't get any tier 1 quarterback talent, but he tried to make up for it with Lamar Jackson, who can break off huge rushing touchdowns, which we know is excellent in this format, and they're expected to have more of a passing game than they did last year. So I don't hate grabbing Lamar Jackson as my QB1. I'm just going to say if you're going to pick another one of these guys between Herbert and Burrow, pick one. Don't take both of them. You can take that value and get it elsewhere rather than playing bully ball at quarterback or trying to make up value, because I don't think by drafting Herbert and Burrow you can compete with the value that I got by taking like Jalen Hurts, who I think is going to be the QB1. So I think we're beating him at quarterback compared to us just because we have such high-end talent in Jalen Hurts. I don't think there's going to be too many weeks of the year where he is outscoring us at quarterback. Running back, he's got Bijan Robinson, a top 3 running back who could have a number 1 overall season, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs. So his profile in the running back room I think is a little bit similar to ours. I'm just going to lean Eckler over Robinson because of his pass-catching role, and we've also seen it in this league. And then Pollard, Henry, and Jacobs I think equate more to our Chubb and Stevenson type backs. And then Najee Harris is more just like a volume play. And we got a little bit more explosive upside, I think. So we have top end talent and explosive questionable talent. I think that's a really good, I think we do have the advantage. So I think we have the advantage at quarterback. I think we have the advantage at running back. Wide receivers, he's got a very strong group. Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, a couple more guys, Metcalf, Allen, and Judy. I think we're equal at wide receiver. And then tight end, Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, and David Njoku. I'm going to say we're equal there as well. I think Mark Andrews is better than any tight end that we have. And Kyle Pitts, of course, is a top 6 tight end. I love him. But just because we drafted 3, we're giving us that little bit more of a chance that we can keep up with his scoring. So I'm going to say we're even at tight end. Maybe lean, give it to him a little bit. I'm going to say we're even at wide receiver. I give us the advantage at running back and quarterback. So I think we have a good shot of beating D. Goodman there. And then Golden Child, he's got Mahomes, Allen, and Fields. That's a lot of draft capital spent, especially in the early part of the draft here at quarterback. I don't think that's very necessary. Hopefully we can beat him. Now, even though he drafted Mahomes and Allen and Fields, I still think, again, there's not too many weeks of the year where we're projecting any one of these guys to totally outscore Jalen Hurts. Of course, Justin Fields, again, one of these guys that I can have huge rushing games, but so can Jalen Hurts. So I'm going to say we're even at quarterback. Running backs, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Breece Hall, Joe Mixon, Alexander Madison. So I think the top of his draft equals the top of ours. It rivals it, if not greater, because McCaffrey is just better. So let's give him a little bit of an advantage. Now, the back half of his running back room, I don't hate, but I don't love it either. Breece Hall is the guy whose injury things are coming out, starting to scare me a little bit more. I was drafting him pretty eagerly, but this is a cumulative format, so there's no playoffs. Scoring week 17 doesn't mean anything more. Each week is the same. So he's not going to be contributing probably for the first half of the year as well as he will probably in the back half of the year. So for that reason, it's just like a pick to me. Joe Mixon, I do like. I think he's very undervalued. And Alexander Madison, people like drafting him right now. That's probably where he deserves to go, but who knows how it's going to go. Wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, Drake London, Jahan Dotson. Okay, so I think our biggest advantage is at wide receiver. I think we're even at quarterback. I'll give him the advantage of running back just because of the McCaffrey. I'll give us the advantage at wide receiver, and then tight end. He's saying Kelsey, he's going to beat you every week of the year because of the fact that we took those 3 of the top 6 tight ends. We didn't let him pair up his Kelsey with a guy like Goddard or Pitts or Kittle. We forced him as his tight end 2 to take Darren Waller, who I don't think belongs in the tier of the top 6. So hopefully we can make up some of that points that Travis Kelce is going to score by drafting a bunch of those tier 2 and 3 tight ends. And this is where that slow rug theory that I was talking about at the beginning, I think really is one of the best things that we can do in these 3-person formats. As I was saying earlier, there's not a ton of things that you can do to differentiate yourself. You're just drafting the best players, and oftentimes it's probably, if you could just draft off of ADP and know you were going to get 2 tight ends in the top 6, maybe 1 quarterback in the top 3, if not 2 in the top 5, 1 running back in the top 5, and then a couple more. If you could program the computer to do that, you'd probably have a great shot, maybe even a plus EV shot at every single draft you'd be in. But there are a few things we can do, and I think drafting a lot of the middle group of tight ends is one of the ways that you can differentiate yourself and exploit your opponents. Because the Travis Kelce drafter is drafting Kelce in the first round, they're usually going to push tight end and not draft their second tight end until way later than probably they otherwise would have. And if I'm the one drafting Andrews, quote unquote, earlier than usually everybody else, hopefully the guy who didn't get Kelce or Andrews is going to be like, okay, I can quote unquote punt tight end, because that's what you do in these 12-person drafts. So they're going to wait on tight end as well. And if I scoop up Hawkinson and then he feels like, I don't want to reach on a guy like Kittle, he's going to keep pushing tight end. And then I scoop up George Kittle. He's going to feel like, oh man, now there's only Kyle Pitts and Dallas Goedert left. I don't mind if I just get one of those 2 guys. Maybe then the Kelce drafter looks over and sees there's not too many tight ends left. He grabs one, and then I grab the 4th. And so we either freeze out one drafter completely at the tight end position, like I did in that $25 draft that you see here. This guy putts, he didn't get any tight ends in the top 6. And I think that is a huge disadvantage for him, where in this format, you got to do what you can. There's only so many roster spots. You got to do what you can to make up points if you're not able to keep up with some of the top scorers. He's got Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp. We're going to have a hard time keeping up with him. And he's also got Bijan Robinson and Jalen Hurts. Where can we make up some of that value? At tight end. He is hemorrhaging points to us at tight end. So we really were able to punish him while giving our team a benefit. We don't just want to punish other teams if it's not doing anything for us. By drafting 4 of the top 6 tight ends, I do think we're giving ourselves more of an advantage, especially against the Kelce drafter, because these tight ends, one, they can fit into your flex spot, so you can start 2 in a given week. That's why I think drafting multiple tight ends is better than drafting multiple quarterbacks, because max you're starting 1 quarterback per week. You can be starting more than 1 tight end per week. So you don't want to miss out. There's nothing worse than having Hurts and Allen both go off and you can only use one of those scores, especially when you're using really high draft capital on both of them. Whereas if we're drafting Kelce, if we're drafting Andrews, if we're drafting Hawkinson, we can use all the spike week points that they have inside of our draft, inside of our roster, and make up the value that we otherwise wouldn't on our opponents. So the slow tight end rug, because it's the slow rug that wrecks you the hardest. I don't think people are suspecting many drafters like me to take 4 tight ends. I just think that's not something people are prepared for. And so in this format, any little advantage that you can exploit, I think we should. And I think drafting a lot of those tight ends in the middle rounds, slowly just removing, making that tight end queue a little bit thinner with every turn, I think we can fluster our opponents and hopefully get them to be extremely weak at tight end. So that's my one tip for the day. I hope you enjoyed this stream. That was a lot of fun. Join me throughout the rest of the offseason. We're going to be doing more drafts, more 3-person drafts, 4-person drafts, 6-person drafts, and maybe some higher stakes stuff on stream. So stick around, and I'll see you in the next video.